Hey there, Rulers, DMO73 here, bringing you the end of our Paradox matches for now, showing an upgraded Valgott versus an upgraded Matelda control. Do keep in mind this is pre-ban list, but it's still a cool showcase of what we started with, now fully realized. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to pre-order upcoming Force of Will sets, ccgprimes.com for singles and supplies, cardodoko.com for those rulers in the international market looking for product, as well as our guest lecturer members Vite Ramen and Full Grammar Alchemist. Class is in session. So to get into it here, we have Tyler on the left with Matelda. This is green, kind of 5-color-ish, but primarily green, red, white. And I am playing Valgott Life Loss. This is a very similar list to what was played in some of the Paradox GPs. Again, do keep in mind that this was done before the most recent September 23rd Paradox ban list update. So you're going to see Valgott have access to Uppercut here. But I still think the idea behind the decks are still very relevant for what we might see in the Paradox competitive space. So we're going to be starting out here as Valgott. We're going to go ahead and try to go for that turn 1 motionless freeze. One of the big things about against Matelda is this idea of you want to be able to keep their kind of early rush in check, and so the later the game goes, there's kind of an inevitability element for Valgott. So if you can kind of keep their early aggression, keep things tapped down, keep answering the knight captains, you should be in a good space. You don't want to go too aggressive though, because you could walk into something like Akushiel. That is a very, very strong angel card that can be used to punish heavy turns, and then you end up just kind of walking into a trap. Tyler hitting that Crystal Barrel Stone here, so access to that green, white, and blue. Again, it's a little bit of a 5-color-ish deck. Just kind of makes use of a lot of the good cards. It's making use of things like Thousand Fractured and stuff like that. We're going to see the pretty standard opening, though, here of 2 arms and taking attendance. Deciding what he wants to grab here, maybe thinking a Defenders could be coming down here. And you do see that there are some backwards cards in his deck. We just hadn't gotten all of our copies of Thousand Fractures in yet. So those backwards cards are Thousand Fractured Reflections, just so you are aware. Now, it is a little bit tricky here for him to be making use of the 2 arms play this kind of early. It's not necessarily something you always want to be doing, but it does burn 4 divinity here. So if he is playing the infinite glyph in his rune deck, he doesn't have access to it anymore, because that card, same with Thousand Fractured, because it just has such high divinity for both of them. So it can be a little bit tricky. You guys going to go ahead and go for that first turn Defenders of the Lower Plateau. While I think this is actually a pretty solid play here, given that the motionless freeze is out, we're probably going to see motionless freeze tap down the token so that flexibility defense isn't an option for him going into turn before recovery, saying, oh wait, let's go ahead and use motionless freeze, tap down that token that has the tap ability. It is a 2-cost card, so we can go ahead and swap it there. This is to make use of that token not being able to redirect spells. Now, that being said, Valgott doesn't have a ton of 1-cost spot removal, so a lot of the stuff would be able to spot remove there. We'll foresee here, and then we're just going to pass, leaving up a lot of interaction here. Again, you're going to see things like Uppercut, you're going to see things like one-hit KO, anything to kind of punish. This matchup is, strangely enough, this like kind of a game of footsie, where it's a little bit about like being able to punish while not opening yourself up to punishes, right? It's tricky. So we see that Knight Captain come down here. We're going to have those tokens. They're both 2/2s. And then his Defenders is actually going to be able to just attack me twice for 200 damage. We'll say, oh, yep, we'll take it. They go down to 38. And then we'll use Motionless Freeze on the Knight Captain, get that tapped down. And then opening up with a Dorian at the end of his turn. This is trying to set us up a little bit for being able to maybe kind of close the game out quickly, thanks to Dorian's ability to deal battle damage to a player and make their life half. Doing this when Matelda doesn't really have much space is really nice. I'm going to go ahead and put that first counter on. So Dorian here, if we get one more counter, we can access it and just have his life total. But we're probably going to do that in response to no blocks, so that we can make sure to give ourselves the best chance of actually hitting him and having his life. Dorian, though, that is still a nice 6/6 Eternal, so it can be used for a lot of really helpful things here to apply pressure. It can be used to take out Knight Captains. This is really nice. Again, keeping that Defiant off the board is really good. And as you saw here, again, we're using a lot of quick cast, stuff like that, because we want to not walk into something like a Cushiel. So now we're at the end of the Valgott's turn. Probably not going to take any more actions because we want to be punishing as much as anything else. So we're going to go ahead and use Valgott here to help open up and get Dorian back online, sacrificing him at the end of the turn to draw a card, and then being able to trigger and reanimate him with a -1. The -1/-1's really not super important here, because ultimately, again, we're trying to mostly do big chunks of damage all at once, or using Dorian to half life loss. So we'll go from there. So we're going into Tyler's turn, and before recovery, he's going to go ahead and try to use to put a seal counter on one of his resonators with hide, and we're gonna he just casts the hide, I guess, and in response we're gonna go ahead and use high-speed uppercut treatment to just clear the board. Oh, he burned coin. Yeah, I missed that. So high-speed uppercut to get all the knights off the board. So this is a good opportunity. He's fully tapped out. We know that rune-wise, unless he's playing Infinite Glyph in the rune deck, or in his hand, that he is not really going to be able to stop us here, and so we can get all of those knights off the board. Now, he does have a second one he can just replay, but again, every amount of investment that he does on his turn sets us up to be able to punish at the end of turn and kind of force him back to square one. We're going to go ahead and do, at the end of turn, a Malevolent Abomination of Slithmere. This is a very helpful card, given that we can attack multiple times. It can be used to help us draw, or kind of do some life loss elements here. Still going to be able to start tapping stuff down. It also gives us the chance to be able to attack more than once. We'll use Motionless Freeze to tap down the hide. And still, we're going to go ahead and get that extra counter onto Dorian, so he's back up to being now at this point in time a 5/5 with a portrait counter, and then we can start moving into combat. So interesting to note here, we're at 4 stones, so based on what we could do here, there is a world where we could just kill Tyler here this turn thanks to the Master Rune. It's a little bit tricky. We'd have to get pretty good hits off of Malevolent Abomination, but what we could do here is and Tyler does still have Will open. If he didn't have any Will open, would be actually pretty safe. So we could use Malevolent Abomination to give himself plus 100 attack, and then put the 2 cards back on the bottom of the deck to give him plus 200 attack and flying. So he'd be able to swing for 600 in the air, and then the life loss from the Vileborn would be essentially 800, recovers, swings again for 600 in the air, so that's 1600. Dorian unblocked would be another 500, so that's 2100, and then we just use the Valgott Master Rune at the end of the turn to deal 1000, and then have him lose another 3100. So essentially it would be lethal, but it's a matter of what all damage is going to go through here. We're not being super aggressive, only having a couple cards in graveyard here with a Malevolent Abomination, and knowing he still has 1 Will open. Probably playing something like Lionel's Determination is possible. He's going to use Fossil Girl here at the end of my turn to go ahead and pop the Motionless Freeze. So playing pretty defensive here, which I think is correct given the number of cards that Tyler still has in his hand, and we're still kind of sussing out the rune deck. Ultimately, we're not in a position where Tyler's really going to be able to do much to us here. We're going to go ahead and pay 3 before recovery to just hard cast high-speed uppercut treatment while Tyler is fully tapped out. Again, clearing all those knights off the board and kind of setting him back to square one. The more times that we can put him in a position where he has to rebuild a board and then is tapped out to do so gives us the most opportunities to be able to then push through for lethals, which is what we're trying to go here. It's a game of punishes, essentially. So he is going to get to recover. Going to use Wolf before recovery to try to grab Hide back to hand. Gets to recover everything. And we're sitting at a position next turn where with Valgott's Master Rune, we're probably going to be able to kill him just enough. 2,000 damage, even in some cases, even 1,000 damage with the Valgott Master Rune. Is it like before doing the Valgott Master Rune is enough for lethal, which is just something to be careful of. So third Knight Captain comes down here. Ultimately, then just a pass for turn. Not a lot of interaction in his hand. He does have the Kushiel. Does have a little bit of cancel mana for command point. Does have an infinite glyph to stop a free spell. Gonna sculpt stones here. And then we're probably just gonna start going into combat. So we'll start with Dorian going in for 5. Kushiel, we haven't played anything yet, so he doesn't have the will to be able to play Kushiel. Has have the Lionel's Determination there, and you do see he is playing Infinite Glyph. So Infinite Glyph would not be usable right now. His divinity count is essentially burned. Still has to kind of be mindful of the abominations. He only has 1 flyer right now, so he can block the Slithmere at least once. Gotta be determined if we want to use Lionel's Determination now or later. Now we could use Lionel's Determination to just pop Slithmere. That's a thing. It doesn't have Eternal. It can destroy any Demon Resonator. Ultimately, he says, I'm gonna decide no blocks. And so we do something here that I actually don't agree with, is we try to go for the Dorian ability as opposed to just hitting him. I think this is greedy on my part. We're eating the Lionel's Determination. It's gonna set he's gonna be defended. Removed from combat, won't be able to attack again. This is what I'm talking about. It's a little bit risky because now we don't have the will for Master Rune, whereas if we had just hit him for the 5, it would have been great. 0 cards, just 1 card in hand, or a few cards in hand. But we have, kind of Dorian's now got the second portrait counter. It doesn't at least stop that part. So we could tuck a couple cards back, like he could have the uppercuts back to force it so that the Slithmere has to be blocked by the witch, or the wolf. We're going to go into his turn here. We're going to try to go for a soul absorption. Because we want to, again, stat neg the board here. He pays a green for Goliath's command point. We're going to go ahead and pitch here. We're fighting at this point in time. We're going to go ahead and pitch for a Zacky's new plan to try to stop it. This does set up him for being able to do Sealed Glyph in the rune deck. From hand. He does have that. But we haven't really burned any of our divinity yet. So we're pretty safe to be able to use our Sealed Glyph of Infinite Loop from the rune deck at this point in time, by putting a counter on there too. So we win the exchange here, unless Tyler has a second one in hand, which he doesn't. This is going to be pretty back-breaking at this point in time, because it's going to... we're probably going to let him hit the new plan and just hit command point. Soul Absorption is going to go ahead and get to resolve, clear the board for -6/-6. He won't be able to reestablish anything for the rest of the turn, because the stat neg is through the whole turn. So even if he has more Knight Captains, that's not going to help. And so it's a pretty bad spot for him to be in, since I already have an established board. He does have the Kushiel in hand, which he'll be able to cast, post-recovery if he wants, and to have as a blocker. But at that point in time, there's just too many things on board, and he has to answer the Dorian. Otherwise, his life total is going to go down so fast. I mean, Dorian with 2 portrait counters plus Master Rune is essentially lethal. And there's just not much in Tyler's hand here to be able to kind of interact. He's got double hide in hand. That just doesn't really do much here. Just kind of looking at his options. He's got an L tracker. He's got a Lionel. That doesn't really do much. You could Judgment, but not enough will to be able to do Judgment plus Master Rune, so not really going to be able to clear the board. So we hit the command point. He hits my new plan. That gets RFG'd. Can't cast any more new plans for the rest of the game. And Soul Absorption clears the board. Hide gets a counter on it, but is very tiny for the turn. And then we move into recovery. So overall, pretty good punishing turn. Being able to set that up was really, really nice. We do see a Precious Stone come down here. Tyler just kind of sitting on a lot of not being able to do much. He could go for a Lionel, but it doesn't really do anything. It can't generate a token. He could go for L Tracker and die immediately, but that really doesn't do anything either. A couple of copies of Hide, it doesn't really do much, although it can be used to pop something that, you know, if he gets more seal counters. He is at a point where he could try to kind of get a lot of will here by like recovering stuff, but there's just not enough seal counters on stuff for that to matter. So we're just going to get to move into recovery. Dorian has to stay tapped because of Lionel's determination. We say that is fine. We're just going to start by going to combat. We don't really need to take any other actions. We're going to put a couple cards back on the bottom of the deck here to give it +2/+2 and flying permanently, or +2/+2 fly permanently and flying for the turn. Hit him for 6. We draw a card. We can pitch one of those cards to recover him. Do Vileborn. Now he does have access to Hide. He could have canceled that activate ability to be able to recover. It doesn't really do a lot here. And then since we've already done as much damage as we did, we can go ahead and just do Blood Spoil Corruption, Life Loss Elements here as our 1 spell for turn, and there's just nothing Tyler has here. Even flashing in a Kushiel, because it's not damage, it's life loss. Kushiel can't help here. He would make it so he can't lose the game, but then we'd go to his turn immediately. He'd be at 0 life and the game would be over that way. And because this is my only spell for the turn, he'd have to essentially full pay for this Kushiel to really do much of anything. And even then, it wouldn't stop it because it's all just life loss. So flashes in the Kushiel. He has Defiant 1, so he'd be able to attack 1 time. Although on the crackback, but we're fine with that. That's okay. That's not nearly enough damage. Damage that would be dealt to becomes 0, but again, we're only doing life loss. We're not doing damage, and it's because I've already attacked. So he just goes ahead and passes the turn there, and we move into game 2. So moving into game 2 here. Gonna go ahead and start with that same kind of early aggression. He does have to be careful here. You know, he could walk into something like Infinite Glyph. There's not really a reason to do it here. He also reveals the top 5. He doesn't need to. It's look at top 5 and reveal one. He does have to be careful here. You know, if he being on the back foot, the fact that I have coin, he could, you know, going for Knight Captain, he could walk into something like one hit KO Anesthesia. Oh. Ultimately, though, we're going to go ahead and go for a turn 2. We're just going to go ahead and use Vacus. I like this play a lot. It gets rid of the Knight Captain. We can answer another Knight Captain by tapping. We'll still be able to block even if we tap. And Tyler goes for a Makoto Cloth Corpse Ritualist. We did not know that that was coming. So that's kind of sucky for us. But we can at least respond to the cast by getting rid of one of the tokens. And then my guy gets removed from the game. I'll take the 200. Now, Ritualist is kind of rough here. A lot of the stuff that I have to deal with is activate abilities. I have to be really careful. He has Barrier J Resonator, so I can't like play another Vacus to get rid of him. I do kind of have to be really cautious. And if he's already on field, you know, I could use something like an Uppercut by paying 1. So that's certainly an option. Again, move to recover. Now, Tyler is also taxed here. You know, that's just something to keep in mind. So a little bit of potential ways to, you know, interact, especially if I do have any free spells. We go for a Knight Captain. Gets a couple more bodies. Swings in for Defiant. Hits me for 4. And then Ritualist is going to hit me for 5. We're going to try to do, in response to trying to go back to combat, paying 2 for Statue of the Misty Dragon to try to rest it and set its defense to 0. Because if we can get that off the field, then we're in a pretty good shape. Otherwise, we have to fight over it, which is not great. Tyler choosing how he wants to possibly respond to that. Starts to go to pay 1 to go for 1,000 Fractured, and I go, oh, you have to pay 2. It still taps you out. So it is going to cancel it. and then Tyler choosing to kind of keep it protected. So a little bit of an error there. You're going to see that we don't change the life totals because Tyler actually never taps him to attack. He doesn't have Defiant. He would have to be rested, so he's leaving it recovered. So we're just going to go ahead and do Statue of the Misty Dragon in our turn to get it off the field, and also an attack order to get rid of the Knight Captain, leaving him with just 3. Tapping ourselves out here, this is the kind of spot that Tyler wants to be in. Again, forcing me to then not be able to generate value, kind of in the same way that you saw in the reverse in game 1. It's forcing the opponent to tap out to answer what you're doing, or to try to rebuild the board so that they then can't reamass and you have the opportunity to reestablish. Tyler's doing a very good job of that here in game 2. That Makoto Cloth Corpse took a lot of my resources out. Using Matelda here digs him into another Knight Captain, so that's going to get played here, putting a lot of bodies on board, which is really good for him. If we had an uppercut treatment right now, it would be really great. We would save ourselves a lot of damage. Ultimately, we're going to be taking 400 from each of these guys. So we'll take 1,200 there. Now, if he had access to a L tracker, that could have potentially been lethal, because each of the tokens that could attack would be 800 attack, so it would be 4,200. But thankfully, we didn't have to worry about that here. Sympathy getting put on top. Get our motionless freeze out to try to give ourselves something. This can kind of answer 4 bodies or 3 bodies in a sense. We can use one to tap something down, and then use another one to banish it to make 2 dudes. And then we're going to cast Demon of the Crimson Flame here. Now, a little bit of a risky spot here. We're going to try to use Demon of the Crimson Flame to pop. We played 2 spells this turn, so he could play that Kushiel, which would be really bad for me. Probably would just close the game out. Demon of the Crimson Flame, if it doesn't, we'll get to pop the Knight Captain. And then I can use Valgott at the end of turn to sack it, reanimate it, draw a card, and then kill something else and gain another 1,000 life, which works really well. Tyler here using the Sphinx here to do Lunar Protective Life Form, which we can fight over that thanks to Sealed Glyph of Infinite Loop, because he's playing it as a free spell. Tyler does have his own Sealed Glyph of Infinite Loop to stop mine, which is unfortunate, but it does eat more of the cards out of his hand. We say, yep, that is okay. Now, the real problem here is I've played 3 spells this turn, which is not great. So this really does set up Kushiel to be an absolute backbreaker of a card. I do get to gain 1,000 life, which is nice. He can flash in Kushiel at the end of the turn. It'll have Defiant 3, so it'll be very much able to attack a lot of times, and there it comes down. This is very, 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 very bad for me. It is a 12-11 with flying, and it is barrier total cost 2 or less. And so I just go, oh, yep, that's absolutely game. We'll scoop it up and we'll go into game 3. So a really good illustration there of just kind of the reverse, right? Of showing me that by forcing me to be on the back foot as Valgott, he can put it in a position where, I don't know why the wins didn't update there, apologies. Forcing me to be on back foot means that he can just kind of continue to reestablish and then punish me for trying to reestablish. In my case, when it was Valgott, it was like just hitting a board wipe, hitting a board wipe, hitting a board wipe. And in Tyler's case, he was playing something like Kushiel to say like, oh, well, you worked so hard to reestablish. Here's this 12-11 Defiant X card. Opening starting there for Tyler. He's going to go ahead and go for a Defenders on turn 2, or turn 1 here. We say that's fine. That's going to be good. Gets that 1/3. Call Stone. Motionless Freeze is going to come out here. We're going to start with a Fossil Girl in the City. We'll respond by using Motionless Freeze to at least lock something down and then banishing it to generate the 2 4/4 bodies. Still a pretty good spot for us. Losing the Motionless Freeze kind of sucks, but we're still in a good spot to be able to keep his early aggression under control. And this is burning resources from Tyler. End of the turn, we're going to go ahead and use World Tree Phoenix to burn the defenders off the board, just to fully get rid of that, so we're not giving Tyler extra cards if we don't have to. And we're in end step, so now the Vileborn token can knock out the defender token, and I can push pressure to his face. Stone here to get a, I start to grab Stone of Sympathy, and then I go, wait a minute, I already have 2 Stones of Sympathy? That's not what I want, so I'll actually just fail to find and see what the stones are. That was a mistake for me. I should have at least stacked a stone that wasn't a Sympathy Stone on top, but we'll go ahead and go into his face for 4, take him down to 36. Start to go maybe into casting a card from the rune deck. We ultimately try to go for a Glyph of Never-Ending Sorrow. This is designed to essentially make a little token that Valgott can sack every single turn to draw you a card without having to lose your main forces. It's pretty helpful for being able to kind of keep your hand advantage up, all for just 1 darkness from the rune deck. This is in the starter deck, and honestly, it's a really good addition for this. He does decide to burn 1,000 Fractured there to answer it. We say, actually, you know what? That's great. We'll lose 1,000 Fractured, and we'll let that go from there. So Tyler leaving up going into his turn has 4 will available. We do see a Knight Captain come down. Gets those extra 2 bodies because of the 2 runes. And we say, well, after those come up, we're going to try to go for a Soul Absorption. He goes for a Goliath Command Point. We're going to do the same kind of fight that we saw before, where we're going to go ahead and go for a new plan to stop it. Again, we're trying to clear his board. Tyler's board here is not super great. He could go for the Rayman here, but it wouldn't even save his board because it's a stat neg. None of them are big enough. So it just doesn't really help him at all. And again, he's out of runes to be able to use Endless Glyph, Infinite Glyph from the rune deck, given that he's already done the expensive part of new plan. Now here is where I get a little ahead of myself. So we shuffle Zacky's new plan in here. We're in a pretty good spot. This is where, again, practice makes perfect, and just kind of recognizing the moments that you have to kind of go in for lethal. Now, that being said, we have to be really cautious because he is playing stuff like, we know he's playing stuff like, Lunar Protective Life Form, so that's probably why I didn't go for it in this moment. But actually hitting with these 2 tokens means that if I cast the rune here and it had resolved and he didn't have Lunar Protective Life Form in hand, we just win, because it'd be 1,800 damage, it'd be another, because it'd be 400, 1,000 from the Gluttony spell, and then at the end of the turn he'd lose another 18, so that actually would be lethal. But again, I just decided to pass, thinking that there might be a Lunar Protective, because if he does have Lunar Protective there, then I lose so much value, right? I do have Infinite Glyph to be able to stop it. It's just a little bit risky in case he has another Infinite Glyph. Like, I don't know, just deciding to try to play it cautious, and we'll see if that kind of pays off in the long run. Leaving up just a lot of will here. He does pitch down a Sphinx in response to my Valgott trigger to stop me from being able to draw a card. Matelda really does like Sphinx here, simply because she can add to hand rather than trying to draw because of her activate ability, which is nice. Also, Tyler should be back up to 3,000 life here at the end of this turn. I think we just missed that Matelda trigger. Just keep that in mind when we were playing. We just forgot that Matelda does that if you're lower than 3,000 life. So if he doesn't gain some life here already, we're going to try to have to recognize that should have been the case. Tyler thinking about maybe performing Judgment this turn. We do actually see a Judgment coming down here, it looks like, just to get Matelda onto the field, as she is a little bit hard to deal with. I do have attack orders, which is something to be mindful of. Matelda's getting that new stone. Thankfully, no resonance trigger here, but she does have barrier blue-black, which is rough. Rough indeed. There is the Lunar Protective Life Form in hand there too. So we played it safe. If we had Infinite Glyph, we had Infinite Glyph, so we probably could have won the exchange anyway, but just kind of pigeonholed the thought process about it. Lionel comes down here as well. We're going to go ahead and flash in a Dorian. Draw for turn. Put an extra counter on Dorian. Put another counter on Dorian. So now if he hits face, we do half life, which is really nice. Sympathy comes into play tapped. Again, this a little bit unfortunate losing that will. Tried to go in for Dorian here. Unfortunately, he doesn't fly, so you can just block with the token from that was generated by Lionel. He also can use Lunar Protective Lifeform here to remove it from combat, gain 15 and draw another card. We could burn an infinite glyph here if we wanted, ultimately saying, you know what, it's fine, we're not going to fight over this one, which I think is a mistake. I think giving him that extra life, letting him draw a card when he just burned 2, I think was an error on my part for sure. Also an error here is not using Valgott to try to bring back Dorian by like sacking it at the end of the turn to serve as a potential threat against the Matelda if he tries to go into attack. Or if he tries to call stone. That being said, she does have Defiant and Flying, so it's not like I could block her right now. Now, one of the interesting elements here about Matelda versus Valgott is once Matelda flips, pretty much the only way that Valgott can kill her is attack order. You saw me play that in game 2. We just have to try to find it, but because we're currently under Sphinx, that could be a little difficult. Now, that being said, Tyler also loses access to his main draw power from Matelda being flipped. So that's something to be aware of. And the inevitability of how much life he gets isn't that big of a deal, given that we have Dorian. It's just a matter of can Dorian connect before things get too out of hand. We do see an L tracker come down here. This is a nice tech, gives the whole board +6/+6, which is really good for him gaining a bunch of life and making this token suddenly a lot more relevant. Thankfully, we can at least block the token with our token. But then now there's also 3 bodies on board here, so eventually Lionel's going to get to accelerate here. We're going to respond to his cast by at least trying to get rid of the token by resting it here with a Statue of the Misty Dragon to at least rest the token down before it can swing, so his only thing he can swing with for the turn is Matelda, and again locks him out of being able to use Lionel to get 2 extra willpower by putting enough counters on stuff. But we are going to have to tank the damage from this Matelda. He is doing the +1, so giving her a +2/+2 for the turn, so all in all she's getting +8 for the turn. Now, this being said, if we could find a way to answer the Dorian, like he might probably going to be able to swing. So the Dorian might be able to kill the Matelda if he calls stone here. We just have to be able to answer that Lionel's determination. You see, Tyler only has a couple cards left in hand, specifically Cushiel, which doesn't help here, and the Rayman is helpful though because of the giving it Eternal. Does call stone, has to pay 300 life to keep it into play. Rayman here being a pretty good asset if he decides to go for keeping it alive off of the Bane trigger or something like that. So we have to be able to answer that for sure. Does hit a light stone, so Matelda's going to get her Force Resonance trigger, get to reanimate something. He can reanimate Defenders and generate, or Knight Captain, and generate 2 extra counters. That's really unfortunate for us. That makes it so it's going to be pretty much impossible for us to be able to get the Matelda off board. Thankfully, we did have Uppercut. We can full pay for it. Pop all of the knights off the board. Doesn't answer the L tracker, which is unfortunate. Still have to answer the Lionel's determination as well. Looking at Valgott's flip side as a potential option here. Let's try to do some drain, put out a big body, while also ramping. If we can get this Matelda off board, this match is not that out of hand. It's just a matter of can we find a way to do that without walking into something like a Cushiel. Do you see our stone here? If we had so one of the ways we could answer it here is if we had Morgana. We could use Morgana's -2 to get rid of the L tracker and then find a way to stop the Lionel's determination. Paying 3, we can also do this. We can use Demon of the Crimson Moon to be able to shoot the L tracker, get that off the board, and set us up nicely. Tyler has to decide whether he wants to go in for Cushiel right now, fully tapping out, possibly walking into something else, or trying to maybe use Raymond. That being said, now that Demon is up, we do have a flying blocker, which helps against Matelda at least one of her 2 swings, and we get to gain some extra life. Probably going to get the Demon of the Crimson Moon off the board here. Or have the Cuscio come down with just Defiant 1, which is not that big of a deal. Still get to gain 1,000 life, which will be nice. Does say, yeah, that's fine. L tracker's gone. Gain 1,000. Swing in our Dorian at Matelda. Down comes the Lionel's Determination here. It's going to remove it from combat. That's totally fine. Unfortunately, we do have to... we could use Valgott to kind of sack it so it can be recovered and ready for next turn, which would be smart. Ultimately, though, choosing not to use Dorian's ability, even though we don't draw a card, which I think is a mistake. I think even if we're not going to draw a card, I think losing, being able to get the Dorian back online next turn would actually be smarter than what I'm doing here, which is that we're going to use Valgott to sack to the Demon to shoot shoot Tyler for an extra 1,000 and gain another 1,000 life. Ultimately, I don't think that was the best play. The fact that Lionel's Determination keeps Dorian from recovering, I think, is a mistake here. I can shoot Tyler for 1,000, I gain 1,000, I have a blocker, it's fine. But Dorian is the thing that's, I think, going to help me win this match at this point in time. And so having him be essentially locked out for another extra turn, I think, is a really bad spot for me to be in. Gonna give a pump to her, or +1/+1 counters to her. So now she has 4 on her, swinging in for 12, gaining him 1,600 every time she swings. We'll take the first 14, or take the first 12, go down to 32. He'll gain the life. Swings the second time, and we'll block the second time. All in all, he gains a lot of life here. I'm going to go ahead and block the second one so we only take 1 swing's worth of damage. Does choose to call Stone, once again opening himself up for Matelda. But again, Light Stone here is going to get his Knight Captains back. Oh, missing the Resonance trigger there. Does have really aggressive hand here. He'll be able to pretty much cast Cuscio plus Raymond here to really set up for the following turn. And then he could do something like a double swing with Matelda, hit a Light Stone, reanimate R tracker or L tracker, pump everybody up, swing again. Like really, really threatening a lot of damage here just because of some misplays on my end of not being able to threaten this Matelda. We're going to go ahead and use a Morgana here, trying to maybe dig into something using her +1/+1, forcing him to discard a card. And try to dig into maybe a second Dorian if we can help it. Does choose to get rid of the Endless Glyph. Unfortunately, not hitting a mono darkness, mono attribute resonator there is really rough. Really rough here. Call Stone. We're in for a world of hurt here. Thankfully, we can at least gain some more life back. We have another one of those demons in hand to be able to shoot him for 1,000. And at this point in time, there's no real reason to not just shoot his face for 1,000 and gain 1,000 and then cycle the Demon of the Crimson Moon, because Dorian's going to get to recover. So, but we're really walking into it here, which I think is rough. We're using Dance of the Macabre Puppet to get a Slithmere back. This is another thing that can fly and can serve as a double blocker. But now we've cast 2 spells, and there's a Cuscio in hand. So this is a rough spot here. So Cuscio's going to come down, only has to pay 2. It'll have Defiant 2. So it'll be able to attack twice. We're going to go ahead and cycle the Demon. Again, gain another 1,000. We don't get to actually deal any damage, but we still get to gain 1,000 life, so we'll go up to 52. So we're doing a good job of keeping ourselves alive. We just need to have like the will for the crackback. If we can absorb kind of 1 more turn worth of damage, then we're in a position where maybe Dorian can help us finish off the game. It's just a matter of what Tyler has here. Before recovery, we do see a Raymond, again, apologies for the card size here. And then after recovery, we're going to hit Knight Captain. So everything's going to be huge here. The only things that can attack, though, essentially there's 4 attacks worth of hits here from double Matelda and double Cushiel. So pretty manageable, but the problem is he leaves open a pretty big field to be able to defend himself. So everyone's getting +4, essentially, from the Raymond. We're going to use Valgott to be able to block with Slithmere. It comes back with a -1/-1 counter. We'll block again. Matelda comes in here. Now, I do think we would have need to put cards back on the bottom of the deck to be able to give it flying. So I think that's a little bit of a shortcut on my art that I just forgot to do that. So apologies there. Dorian is still active. Gets a couple of those tokens here. Those tokens were already there from the Knight Captain. Calls Stone. Hits a Matelda Stone, so no reanimate here. So this is actually not a terrible spot, but we have to play really tight. Tyler has 0 cards in hand. His rune deck is all but spent at this point in time. If we can somehow find a way for Dorian to be able to connect, we can just close the game out with Master Rune. That being said, that's a little tricky. It's a little bit of a tall order. We can get rid of the Cushiel with Morgana, so they can get that out of the way, which is nice. The tokens are 4/4, so that's a little bit rough. Something like if we try to swing and he goes to block with one of the tokens, if we had like Soul Absorption, we'd be able to win the game here. Heck, even one-hit KO Anesthesia would be able to work here, provided he blocks with one of the tokens to try to keep his Raymond alive, which I think is probably a good position, maybe. We could also try to swing in with our tokens first, just to kind of see if we eat some blockers and set up that way. Because if Dorian connects and then you use Master Rune, that's lethal, because they lose half their life and then half their life again. It's just a matter of, can we get that element here? We're going to swing in with Dorian first, which is a mistake. 100% this is wrong, because we should be trying to swing with the tokens to eat some chump blocks first, because he's probably going to block with, Eld Tracker, and or he's probably going to block that with Raymond. Unfortunately, though, I don't have any way to stat neg the token out of the way of the Dorian, and so because it's too big, and so unfortunately, like, we are at a position where if we had one more will, or if the token had just been a 2/2 instead of being pumped up by the Lionel, we actually could win here by just stat negging it, thanks to Dorian paying 4 and then tapping for stone and paying 4 and doing it. But not a great spot. So we try our best here. We think, I don't know how we're going to survive. We can try to make it so we at least don't die on crackback. Matelda's not quite big enough to kill us yet, so we can at least go for Valgott here, try to drain some life, ramp ourselves a stone, get ourselves another blocker, terrifying imperishable, try to set up for something next turn. Try to ramp that stone, hopefully hit a darkness stone, do some life loss before things get too out of hand. Double checking that I can survive. I've got 3 blockers for everything plus Matelda. Matelda herself can't kill me this turn. Hopefully getting a new stone off of the enter effect. Unfortunately, whiffing on the enter effect to be able to life drain. So we'll just go ahead and take advantage of the moment we have and do the Master Rune, which has Untouchable. So thankfully we'll at least do 1,000, we'll do the 1,000. and then cast a pack of hounds just for another blocker that has Bane to set up for if he can survive for one more turn. Matelda right now, though, I do think is just lethal in general, because she'll be able to get pumped up again, especially if he drops into another, like, a tracker. So just Matelda herself big enough there to be able to kill me, and so we scoop it up. And so that is the match. Just a couple of misplays, but cool to see the back and forth again. It can get very, very grindy. Thank you all so much. We'll have some further discussion on Paradox with stuff in future videos, but until next time, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.